Okay, so here we have the game. We have these little lighter areas of little patches of grass that when the player collides with it, it's a trigger. So if the tag matches player, then it checks to see if the players get access raw, horizontal, and vertical are both zero. And if they're not, so it's not standing still, then it rolls a random choice, gets a random number, and if it is lower than the random number rolled, then the chance, then it triggers the fight, and but it won't trigger if you're standing still. So if we just walk onto here and stand here, it won't do anything no matter how long you stand here. But if you walk around, boop, triggered it. All right, and then it'll load in. We have some weird load time issues, but I'm not sure why. So you can see that we have only the one ability right now, and these guys spawn into their little spots here. But I'm just going to show you this is how the battle works. That's me choose an action. I choose an action. It tells me that it landed. They look hurt, and so he's going to choose to heal. And then the particle effects are just in the battle spots, and they're just called whenever the action is called from the battle system script. So if we whittle them down to zero, just gonna heal a little bit again. He's gonna play his death animation. Wisp's gonna spawn, and we're gonna suck in all of his ability, and now we own it. So the next time we go to fight, we'll have it. So here in the code here, we have the player behavior for the rolling encounter. So if the player is touching the grass over here, this is tall grass, then it rolls for the encounter, and depending on what type of grass for what type of enemy, but then it does that, and then we'll start the coroutine for loading battle. And then the battle system here, we have a whole bunch of functions setting up the battle to figure out which one is going. And then, so for the player turn, we're just calling a bunch of coroutines. So it shows the actions, turns on all the buttons that are available down here. So hide actions hides all of the buttons, depending on which one is active and which one's not. They are spawned back in. And then when you press the one of the buttons, it plays the coroutine. So that'll just pull stuff from the battle object, and all of the objects like the player prefab and the enemy prefabs all have this, and these are just kind of the abilities. So in the battle system with the enemy AI, it'll figure out which enemy is attacking, and then it kind of just works through its battle logic. So it decides like, oh, if my health's halfway, then I'll heal, and if it's not, then I'm going to attack. And that's just for the weak one because that's like easily to beat. And then it just kind of like ramps up, and the strategy gets a little bit more intense, depending on what thing. It's not as modular as we would like it. The original intention was to have everything in the battle object, and you just call it by more so how you're calling this one. You pass the battle object, and it does that. But we kind of misunderstood it a little bit, and we kind of ran out of time. If we had more time, I would have done it differently, but it's kind of how it runs right now. So yeah.
Um, I'm just going to show stuff in the editor because the music will overpower my voice of the game. And there's a uploaded version on itch.io that you can play. So this is our title screen. I did it, nothing fancy, bare bones, but it does the job, so that's good enough. Then we have a very basic main menu. Again, nothing special, but it does the job. Then we have the overworld scene here. Let me zoom in here. So here's our overworld. I created it all. It's not anything spectacular, but considering the time constraints that, well, I guess technically we placed ourselves under, but due to a variety of factors, my partner had things, he needed to do, and I started a new job, and I needed to train for it. So I really had to put everything for school on the back burner. So if I'm being completely honest, we did this whole thing in 5 days, which honestly, given that constraint, I'm actually pretty proud of what we were able to produce. Um, so here's the overworld. I've organized this into several tile maps. Overworld being one. These highlighted areas that you see here are the encounter areas, and I've placed numbers next to them because you do have to do them in a specific order. But you're supposed to just figure that out as you go along. But the other ones will not trigger if you do not do the ones before it. Um, but in terms of like the actual tile maps here, so I have a collision one here. So this is all the places in the world that there's collision. And you might notice there's some big gaps here because I originally had bigger plans for this game, but in the interest of getting this in on time, I had to scrap them. This is the ground, so all these places, that is where the dirt sound effect will play. Same thing with the grass. Stone is basically just where the town is. Wood is basically just a few bridges and a few other select places. Tall grass is obviously the encounters. And then this is how I got all the places with collision to make that bounce sound that you hear in Pokemon. And then undergrowth was for some very particular scenarios where I had trouble getting the tiles to look correct. Uh, so yeah, that's that. I worked on all of that. I set up the main uh, framework of the project. Let's go to some scripts, I suppose. Oh, it's up here already. So this is the terrain detector, how the game knows what kind of tile you're stepping on and what kind of sound should correspond to that tile. It's very basic. It's all just on collision stuff, and there's some bools so that it doesn't make that weird flickering sound when you step on it. Unfortunately, player behavior has basically everything on it, all the saving, all the loading. Not ideal, but again, I didn't give myself enough time and I didn't plan this properly. So it is what it is. That's my biggest lesson from this. This on paper, this project doesn't look that big. It looks actually very small until you actually start doing it, and then it quickly balloons. So if I was to do this again, the first thing I would do is plan all my systems and write like how are they going to integrate with each other and how is data flowing from one system to another and vice versa. So it's not very coupled, but the saving and loading is completely coupled to the battle system, unfortunately. Not ideal, but again, with the time constraints, it had to be done to get it done on time. And as you can see, I also had plans for another enemy. Also had to scrap it. But with the short amount of time we did have, I am able to say that I think I'm quite proud of what we've done. Um, so if I happen to do a game jam in the near future, I think I'll be okay. I can definitely produce something workable in a short amount of time. Uh, but yeah, there are bugs, and I wish I had given myself at least a couple days for debugging, ideally, instead of a couple hours. But it is what it is. And that's pretty much it. I'm sure Harrison has talked about these other things, you know, and it's a simple project, but it quickly ballooned into something much bigger, and it became much more difficult to manage than I initially thought it would. But it was a good exercise. I had fun, and I can easily expand on it if I want. I will have to completely redesign a few things, but it's an option. I originally wanted to make this a portfolio piece, but then I came up with a way better idea that I could do on my own. It would showcase more abilities than just Unity, so I scrapped that idea. But I think this is a pretty solid little game. And thanks for listening, and I guess I'll see you at the final. Take care.